executives and women employees. And he says, don't ever make an important business decision without a woman at the table, which is a great line. And I said to him, I said, Leonard, your business, you have so many great women working there, and they're all competitors. They're all competing for the same dollar, for the same success. I said, but they all get along and they all play in the same sandbox and they all respect each other. And I said, and that's because of your leadership. It starts from the top.
That is true. Do you have like a hit list? Like, who do you want that you haven't, that is still, does anyone say no to Fern these days?
Yes. Some people say no. Carolina Herrera, who I stalk her. I mean, I love her to death and have known her as well for so long. And she loves me. We have a great relationship. But when I asked, and she's come to quite a few of the 92Y. She was at the Bill Cunningham one.
Oh, wow.
And this is a funny story. She said the first time she came to one, she got in her car and told the driver, going to the 92nd Street, why? And he said, Mrs. Herrera, that's 1 block away. Because she lives like on 5th or Park and 91st, I think.
Wow.
And so I said, did you still take the car? She goes, of course. But she says, Fern, it's too personal. And I said, but we'll work around it. I don't have to say the really deep rooted whatever you don't want to talk about. But
right.
she sees me and she laughs. She sees me. She goes, no. And the other one is killing me is Ralph Lauren. I mean, Ralph did a beautiful foreword in the first book.
Yeah.
We have history together working on Fashion Target's breast cancer and other projects. But he and his team has always said, okay, we'll let us think about it for 10 years, it's like, let us think about it, so then they still say it's not a done deal. So I hope springs eternal.
Listen, you got Bill Cunningham, so anything is possible.
Correct. There you go.
Well, before I would like to talk more about the book, but we also need to talk about your iconic career in fashion. Growing up, like, was it always fashion for you? Like, where did this start?
I grew up in Brooklyn before Brooklyn was a hot place to grow up in. And my dad was in the garment center. He was a salesman for women's scarves. His brothers were all salesmen for different sportswear and textiles. And I just loved going to work with my father. Any day off from school or holiday, we'd take the bus to the subway and go into Manhattan, and I'd watch him schmooze these fashion directors and buyers from the stores and charm them, because those salesmen in those days were all really charming guys. A word you don't hear very often today. He was charming and smart, and they always had great jokes, and and always took them out to lunch, and I'd go to lunch with him and his buyer, and in a fancy restaurant, and learn how to order fancy food. And I'd go to the art department and watch the ladies drawing and paisleys and painting everything before they had CAD computer systems. And and I saw that this was a great career for women. And I just really, I mean, I loved clothing, and I was voted best dressed in my high school, which I had to live up to that status. And that's how it all started. My dad also would always bring women's wear daily home from work every day. And I would literally, like in high school, read women's wear and get a sense of what was going on. And I'd listen in on his conversations with his brothers or other people. So you kind of get that in your DNA a little bit without even knowing it. You kind of have the industry in your blood. And
right. What did the early days of like you being in the industry, like those lean years, those early years, like what did that look like for you?
Well, my first job was at Mademoiselle magazine, which was a Condé Nast magazine. And in my era, it was in fact one of the most fabulous magazines ever. It's just kills me that one was, was let go and shut down. But I got to Mademoiselle by winning a contest when I was in college. I joined the Mademoiselle College Board, which was, you fill out an application in the magazine and send it in, and you get a nice fancy letter, you're part of the college board. And then they would send you packages in mail to kind of critique like a sounding board, a focus group. certain products from advertisers and other ideas. And so they would be getting the college girls' opinion on stuff, which was
Right.
very, very smart of them. And then to elevate and move up the ladder in this competition, you had to design a garment or something in graphics or poetry or literature, photography, all the different categories that the magazine was known for. And so I did something because I was studying graphics and communication. And next thing I knew, I got a call from somebody at the magazine that there was going to be an editor in the area in Buffalo where I was at school, and would I meet her and take her around? And I didn't know at the time, but I was being interviewed all day,
Right.
and I was selected to be a guest editor, which is one of 20 girls at the time brought to New York for the month of June to guest edit their. I used to say the September issue, but it's the August issue, and it's the back to school issue, and that was when they had back to school departments in department stores. Now people just buy a new hoodie and they're fine for school.
Right.
And that was an extraordinary experience. It was a month long. I was the guest art editor. We went to Israel on a trip and, got to meet all sorts of incredible people. And then they offered me a permanent job, the only one of my group of 20. And if that contest existed today, it would be like some of the things you do, it would be a reality TV show with 20 girls living in some high rise in New York, all competing for the job in the fashion industry or trying to meet, the cool photographer or, hot guy. It would have been a great reality show, but that was way too early.
Well, that is definitely a show that I would watch. Let me just say that.
Yeah.
Well, during your career, you served as the executive director for CFDA from 91 to 2001. And during that tenure in 1993, you came up with 7th on 6, which has turned into the iconic New York Fashion Week. Is this true that this idea came to you because you attended a Michael Kors show and the roof fell in on Naomi and Cindy Crawford and all these models that we know and love so much?
Well, basically, that is absolutely the truth. It wasn't necessarily my idea to start with. When I joined the CFDA as executive director, I joined at the end of March in 91, and I was selected and honored with the position on my birthday at a big board meeting with every designer around the table. And then the next 2 weeks was basically Market Week, which is also / Fashion Week. And at that time, if there were 50 fashion shows in New York, they were in 50 different locations. Nobody talked to each other. If your show was downtown or uptown, the east side or the west side, nobody cared who was before and who was after. Nobody cared about making it easier for the buyers and the editors to get from one place to another. If you had a show in the Plaza Hotel, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you had to strike it because somebody was having a bar mitzvah there that night. And if you wanted to do it the next day, you'd have to pay all over again for all the equipment. So it was not cost effective and not effective just in general. And so Michael Kors had a show in an empty lofty space in Chelsea, a concrete raw space. Designers love raw concrete spaces. And when the bass music that went on, as you know, is very loud. And if things aren't nailed down, they tend to shake. Well, this time the ceiling shook and plaster literally came down on the runway onto Naomi, Cindy, Linda, Claudia, Michael always had the best girls in the show and to this day still has the best models. And they just brushed it off. They paid the big bucks and kept walking. But when the plaster landed in Susie Menkes's lap in the front row from the International Herald Tribune, and Carrie Donovan, who was the fashion critic for the New York Times. And I found out years later that it broke Carrie's Chanel lipstick that she had in her bag. And that was a custom made color for her that they didn't make anymore. So she was furious. And they wrote the next day that we live for fashion. We don't want to die for it. And I said, I think my job description just changed. And it became a mission to find spaces that were convenient, that would organize, centralize, and modernize the shows.
So that's great. You come up with that idea. Now, how do we make that happen? I mean, it's, was it dialing for dollars? Like that's a great idea for him, but how does this come to fruition?
totally dialing for dollars. You got that right.